actually decreased revenues with that Tax Cut and Jobs Act that they called it, that was passed in December of 2017. So I want to take Friday's program and I want to talk about that and help us to understand that in context, so that we have a framework, that helps guide us in how we deal with the issues that are in front of us. Right now, we are being lied to constantly about this debt ceiling, and we need to correct those lies.
Yeah, I guess everybody put their spin on it, or whatever their constituents is. They want to spend money according to their, like you said, their self-interest. So that's how they spend it.
Just to give you a clue about what we're going to talk about on Friday, I need for you to know that if you look at what this country has done, this country has been financing tax reductions for the wealthiest in this country, financing that reduction in taxes for them.
Wow.
By creating debt for the country.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's organized.
Right. I mean, on purpose.
Yeah.
Right? We would not have the debt that we have if people had just paid the taxes that they owed at the end of the Bill Clinton administration. We just left the taxes like they were and didn't do anything. Left the corporate taxes like they were, left individual income taxes like they were. You would not have any debt at all. You'd have surpluses going from every year from 1999 going forward to today. You'd have surpluses every year and so on. I just need for us to understand that we've been hustled. That these people that have been talking about this, we tax too much, blah, blah, blah. What they've been doing is they've been steadily reducing corporate income taxes and reducing the taxes that are paid by the top 0.1% and the top 10% of people in this country, income earners in this country. They've been steadily lowering the tax rate that they're that we have established for those populations of people, without doing anything to create any other revenue stream. If you had another revenue stream, the United States started making bricks. We make bricks now, and we sell 8 trillion bricks, a year, and we pay down our deficit with the profit off of making those bricks. That would be cool. We could do that, but we don't. You know what I mean? We could sell wind power. We could sell tidal power. It's going to require federal money in order to create the infrastructure for tidal power, the infrastructure for wind power, the infrastructure for solar power. You have to create an infrastructure for that. That generally gets done with public money. Well, then the public should have a stake in those industries. You know what I mean? Instead of those, just we do with our tax dollars, then private industry comes in and sits on top of the infrastructure that's paid for by the public, and they make all of the money, and all you have is debt. As a federal government, you don't get any revenue out of it. It should go the other way. If you're going to build a non-fossil fuel energy system, wisdom would say, make that a nationalized business, and say over the next 20 years, the federal government is going to get a piece of the money so that we can recover the money that we had to spend in order to create that business opportunity in the first place. We could do things to create revenue for ourselves.
Yeah. Mr. Hare, we have, as a people, traditionally, we've created different things. Big organized business and different things, but we always, for some reason, seem to find a way to outsource it to other nations. And when that happens, we don't do nothing but weaken ourselves. Just like now, we got China trying to come in here and buy a huge piece of the United States.
And how did China get into a position that they're the biggest manufacturers in the world? Because the United States used tax laws to make it easy for American businesses to become international businesses, and then sell the manufacturing operations that used to be, in West Valley, that used to be in Buffalo, and so on, sell them to the Chinese and the Indians and the Irish, and so on. And then they got to produce their products at a lower price point, still didn't lower the prices that they charge us, for those products. So we lost the manufacturing jobs and the income that those manufacturing jobs created. and we didn't gain anything.
Mr. Hare, just one quick question. Just like to know, do we have any businesses or anything that is solely our own here in the United States that's not outsourced that other nations don't
in
have?
the United States, we consider it to be socialism for the government to own businesses. So we don't own anything.
Nothing in particular. So everything, unless there are patents or different things put on.
Well, even the patents we don't own. Private individuals own those patents.
Okay.
Now, I shouldn't say we don't own. We do have some research operations that are paid for by the government, and the government owns those patents for whatever comes out of that research. Mm-hmm. But that's on a minimum scale. On a large scale, everything we do is done through the private, business model. So I agree with your basic point, which is if we gave the government a stake in new industries that didn't exist before, that you have to actually invent,
right,
and then create an infrastructure for those industries to be able to operate, in the world, then you got to spend tens and hundreds of billions of dollars to get that done. Where does that money come from? Where it's been coming from is they just take it out of the pockets of the American taxpayer.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
But what they could do is they could make those businesses publicly owned for a short period of time. I say short period of time, I'm saying 20 years, to give you an opportunity for you to get those businesses off the ground, get them established, and allow the federal government to recover some of the cost for building the infrastructure for those businesses, those new operations in the first place. But that's me, I can't be both communist and capitalist, so we just you got to work that out with me. But let me talk a little bit about this problem that we are having, with regard to immigration. I went to an article written by Ryan King, title 42 ends. Mayorkas says Border Patrol experienced a 50% drop in migrant encounters. So you understand what we're talking about. Title 42 was a provision in U.S. health law that said that you could not migrate into the country unless you could prove that you were free of coronavirus. So if you came in and you didn't have something that proved that you were free of coronavirus, they could just send you back across the border without any hearing on your asylum request or whatever, your refugee status, whatever was your reason for you trying to come to the United States. They could just set aside, whatever your reason was and send you back across the border. That was the Donald Trump innovation on immigration control. Mm-hmm. Of course, that was fine when Donald Trump was doing it, right? He was a hero. When Joe Biden did it, he's a horrible person. He's acting just like Donald Trump. So the federal courts had ruled that Biden could not end the enforcement of Title 42 any earlier than the end of the emergency. You can't have both. You can't both say that there is a coronavirus, COVID-19 emergency in the country, which was the basis for you implementing Title 42. You can't have that emergency and simultaneously not have the emergency. You got to have either it's one or the other. So as long as Title 42 was going on, you couldn't. You would be able to keep rejecting people on the border on the basis of them not having proof that they were free of COVID-19. But once that authorization expired, then you go the other way. Title 42 disappears as a basis for keeping somebody from the border, but you go back to something called Title 8, which was an immigration protocol. Title 8 said that, or was modified by the Biden administration to say that you can't come into the country unless, as an asylum seeker, unless you've gone to another country on your way to the United States. You go to another country and ask for asylum in the other country. Have them say, no, we can't give you asylum because we're too poor, whatever their reason is. And then you could apply for asylum in this country. Now, Biden did that because he wanted to spread the amount of time it took for people to get from wherever they came from to get all the way through the asylum processing in the United States. And instead of having all of that happen within like 2 weeks, In fact, I think in the law in this country, you can only keep somebody who crosses the border illegally, you can only keep them in U.S. custody for 3 days. And after that, you either have to let them go or you got to send them back across the border.
When you say let them go, is that let them into the
in
country?
the country.
Okay.
And so now, just so we're clear about that issue, 80 to 90% of the people that they let go into the country, without a bond or anything like that, they have to sign something that says they're going to come back on such and such a day. 80 to 90% of those people come back on that day. They're sitting right out there in front of the courthouse waiting to hear. We have people in this country who behave as if these folks are just showing up, bum rushing the country, running across the border, hiding out in basements, and whatnot someplace.
But they're basically following the protocol.
For the most part, they're following the protocol. Mm-hmm. People are making a big deal out of this immigration thing because the Republicans figured out roughly at the end of the Ronald Reagan administration, around 1986, they began to harp on this immigration issue on the basis that the immigrants were different people than quote unquote Americans. Now, Willie thought that he was an American too, until he tried to get into the building today. All of a sudden, the papers please stuff, the papers please stuff didn't work. When he tried to get in the building, he needed to have a little bit more than papers please in order to be able to get into the building. My God. So you had this Latino population that's brown, that speaks a different language, speaks Spanish or some Native American language, and that was the population that was muscling in, roughly 3 million people a year, muscling into the country. And so the Reagan administration, they reacted to that and said, that's a danger to us. They'll be replacing us. If we let this continue to go on, pretty soon, we're not going to be the majority in this country.
Right.
The Latinos are going to be the majority in this country.
Well, equal opportunity. The reason why I got my job in Time Warner 20 years ago was equal opportunity, and there was a lady there. I remember she was saying, "Well, in the next 20 so years, minorities won't be the minorities; they'll be the majority." And they were saying the white. She put it out there. The white,
Let me just give you another comical wrinkle on this.
Gotcha.
Okay, that I'm pretty sure nobody thought about. Guess who also was having an issue with the surge in Latino migration into this country?
Santos.
Other Latinos.
I knew you all would say that. Other Latinos are good. That's a good one, right? Because they felt like, well, we had to go through the legal process to get in, right? Yeah. You all are just bum rushing in here. Mm-hmm. You're knocking us out of jobs that were accessible to us.
Right.
And we got a problem with that. You should go back home,
right?
Face a couple of murders, do 3 rapes, get robbed 16 times, by Wednesday, and improve it. And then when you come back, we'll entertain the idea, of asylum for you. Wow. So we had other Latinos that were actually being racist against other Latinos.
Right.
Right.
But that ain't the big problem.
What's the big
problem? That ain't the big one.
What's the big one?
The big one are the same people that Willie H. was talking about who said that he wasn't a citizen when he tried to get into this building.
Oh.
African people have gone, this already occurred. We talked about this in the 1980s, when I was running another federal agency. We talked about this in the 1980s, that this was going to occur. It has now occurred in spades. And what I mean by has occurred is the largest minority population in this country used to be African Americans.
Right.
In fact, African Americans didn't even migrate here. They were kidnapped.
Right, we know that.
Snatched and brought over here, but they kept having babies.
Right.
Because there was money in having the enslaved people make new babies that you could enslave, right?
That's correct. That's profit.
So they continue to make more and more and more babies, and, you had 14% of the people in this country were African American people. Guess what percentage of the country now is African American?
40?
Nope, just about a little over 13%. Guess how much of the country is Latino? Yeah, almost 20%.
Wow.
So African people are now the second largest minority population.
Mm.
Now, I don't know if this is lost on you, but I
Wow.
talk to people all the time, all across the country. And there are lots of African people who are concerned, using their words, they're concerned that their space or their place as the number one minority in the United States has been usurped
Yeah.
by these illegal, border crossings and
maybe.
so on, right?
Okay.
See, this is the reason why when you look at Trump's not polling his votes in 2020, you saw that African women all very loyal to, their principles. 93% of African women said, nope, no Donald Trump, get him out the country. Don't let him anywhere near the planet. Send him to Pluto. He's too crazy. We don't want him around.
Right.
But only 87% of African men said the same thing.
Right.
And we talked about this. Why would African men feel differently than African women?
Right.
You live in the same household. You're facing the exact same circumstances. How could they be so different? Because African men were listening to American Caucasian men who were saying that these Latino people are coming here they're not having kids to come here. They're just bringing the kids. They're bringing people already grown, in here, and they're replacing. Serious, I'm serious now. They were talking to African people in this country about the Latinos being the center of a great replacement of black people in this country, being replaced as the leading minority in this country by the Latino people. And we actually have African people reacting to that. I got spastic when this was first said to me because I couldn't understand why would that be an issue to you?
Right.
I'm wondering what is
Power.
what is the
Power. It's
the thing?
always about power.
So because Hispanics, they jumped us and now they're the biggest
But you're gonna have
minority.
You're gonna have African people all over the country mad at me saying, why isn't they telling people that stuff? Right? But it's important for us to understand you can't get to consensus and a coherent policy framework if you're not saying the truth to yourself.
I understand, but the question is, how would this bring this particular minority power and set us back in power just because they're the biggest minority?
Instead of you having black people becoming the county sheriff and the county executive and the school board superintendent.
Doesn't this go on the well, I guess voting when you look at voting.
Well, it does.
When you look at voting, but I'm thinking
Santos.
It'll go on. Santos got in. He got in differently.
Santos said that I'm everybody's every minority's heart child.
Yeah.
Perfect example right there.
He even aspired to the LGBT.
I'm Brazilian. I'm Latino. LGBTQ plus, et cetera, et cetera. I'm tall.
Handsome.
I robbed a couple of people in Brazil. I hustled you, for $1.5 million.
His schooling background.
I lied about my schooling background. I lied about my marriage.
I look privileged. I look like the privileged white. I got everything.
He did everything you could do to be everybody's pitiful, sorry, unfortunate person. Vote for me and I'll set you free. He did everything. He's a Richard Pryor of the minority frauds and whatnot. But my core point in saying this and sharing this with you is the real power is for those Americans who are actually able to believe in a majoritarian democracy in which everybody has certain floor guaranteed rights that cannot be taken away even by a majority of the people in this country, a multi-racial, multicultural, majoritarian democracy. You have to believe in that, because if that's not what you're fighting for, whatever you're fighting for is something that's just good for you and not good for anybody else but you. So you're putting yourself on a path that the only way you can win is to make other people lose. The only way that you can make all of us win is for all of us to accept the identification. To be an American is not to be a particular race. To be Swedish, you might have to be a particular race. You got to look like a Swedish person. To be Norwegian, you got to look like a Norwegian person. But if you're from the United States, you're not going to be able to look like any particular thing unless your clothes, mark you.
Well, Santos pulled it off.
Well, Santos is not even American. We don't know what he is. I don't know how he got here. The Republicans owe us money for allowing that dude to run for office in the first place. But my core point is that we can't win collectively. We cannot win unless we accept the idea that to be an American is a political citizenship definition. It is not an ethnic definition.
You know what, Mr. Hare, I understand that 100%. Mm-hmm. I'll put it in to your point. The United States is a huge melting pot of different people, different nationalities, different religions, and when we all come together, I see, or we should be represented as the same, even though that's not always true.
Right. So if we're going to go forward, we need to have a coherent way to go forward. Mm-hmm. So we can't be coherent if I'm just for straight people and I don't care about the needs of whatever non-straight people are.
Right? That's correct. That's correct.
I either got to be in it for everybody or not in it for anybody except for myself.
Almost like God, in it for everybody.
In it for everybody. I wanted to make this point before we shift to the break and then go into the next half of the program. Do you recall just before Title 42 was about to end as a law, they were telling us there's going to be this massive rush of immigrants to the border. They're going to say the border is open now. And the Republicans are doing everything in their power to signify to people in the South, in Central America, Joe Biden's here, the border is open. That was not true. That was a lie. But they were doing that because they wanted to create a crisis at the border so they could then blame that crisis on Joe Biden. But since the Title 42 authorization expired, border crossings have actually dropped by almost 50%. This goes back to May 12th. From that day to the day, border crossings have dropped by about 50%.
Mr. Hare, does it have anything to do with the hair solution?
We're going to talk about that on the other side of this break.
I'm hoping so.
We're going to talk about this the other side of the break. So listen, why don't we do that? Let's take our break, and hopefully we'll get some of the folks in the audience. We need for you all to participate.
Oh, yeah.
And let us know what your thoughts are. You don't have to accept my frame of reference. Whatever your frame of reference is, we need to hear it so we all understand what all of us are thinking. So call us again. It's 716-878-5104. That's 716-878-5104. We will see you on the other side of the break here at Living for the People at 91.3 FM WBNY.
To protect his home and family from disaster, Steve used courage, wisdom, and his camera phone.
That should do it.
Way to go, Steve! By simply taking digital pictures of his family's important documents, Steve can always have them stored safely online, no matter when disaster strikes. Learn other simple ways to protect your home and family before a natural disaster at ready.gov. That's ready.gov. A message from FEMA and the Ad Council.
91.3 FM WBNY is proud to present Democracy Now! With Amy Goodman.
Welcome to Democracy Now!
Award-winning investigative journalism.
Is the NRA imploding?
Providing relevant analysis that makes you think.
Secret State Department documents, including evidence of U.S. war crimes.
Fact-finding reports you will not hear elsewhere. Democracy Now! Airs Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. on 91.3 FM, WBNY, Buffalo. Ready for radio that's challenging, innovative, and encouraging? Tune in, Living for the People.
This is L. Nathan Hare. Join me right here, 91.3 FM WBNY, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 9 a.m. after Amy Goodman's Democracy Now! We'll provide objective analysis regarding current issues. Call 878-5104. It's Living for the People on 91.3 FM WBNY. All right, welcome back to Living for the People. This is L. Nathan here, your host. We're here with our in-studio audience of one, Norm MacArthur. Welcome back, Norm.
Thank you, Mr. Hare.
And we're here with our citizen of the 21st century who does all of the electronics and information technology stuff that makes these things possible for us to air this program. Willie H. Welcome, Willie.
Welcome, everybody, to Living for the People with L. Nathan here. Once again, guys, call in 716-878-5104. Also, we on Facebook, WBNY, stream 91.3 FM. You can comment there. Let us know that you're here and voice your opinion.
Yep. And so, you know, when we're talking about this immigration issue, one of the things that's important, we talk about this from time to time on this program. It's a proverb, one of the things that was taught to me by my father, which is that in order for you to solve a problem, you have to actually understand what the problem is that you're trying to solve.
Yes, sir.
So if your problem is that the grapes aren't growing fast enough, so you need to have faster growing or more grapes, right? That's what you think the problem is. Growing apples is not going to solve the problem with the grapes.
Right.
Right? So we're talking about an immigration problem in this country, but is that really the problem? So immigration and asylum seeking are not the same thing. But our media, you know, the wonderful media, and we're in the media, so we're involved in this stuff too. Our media gives people the impression that immigration and asylum seeking are the same thing. They are not. Asylum seekers are people that are running from something. They are fleeing someplace.
Okay.
Immigrants are people that are running to something.
Right.
They're trying to get to someplace.
Mm-hmm.
Those are completely different scenarios,
Yes, sir.
right? Asylum seekers, according to the Geneva Accords, I know you all probably don't know this. You signed these, 80 years ago. You were the ones that wrote, the Geneva Accords. And then you signed the Geneva Accords that said that what the Accord said you were going to be bound to do as a country, right? We didn't ask you to do this. You did this. You policymakers of the United States, you did this. The Geneva Accord says the U.S. commitment to the Geneva, this is the U.S. commitment to the Geneva Accords, says the Geneva Convention Accords state that the international legal position on this matter is clear. The United States must permit entry and afford refuge to anyone it has recognized as a refugee or to whom it has granted asylum. Moreover, it cannot return any person to a country where she or he may suffer torture or other persecution. It says no ifs, no buts, no qualifications on national security.
So this basically is dealing with people that are seeking asylum then.
Right. People
they're just,
people that are on the run.
Yeah, they're on the run.
Earthquake happened, Willie H. ate their house. So they had to go someplace where there was a house.
Right.
Wow. I know, America, they got houses.
Now,
so they came here.
Quick question.
Mm-hmm.
With the Geneva Accords, do any other countries follow the same policy that the United States is following?
194 countries in the world signed the Geneva Accords.
So all the rest of them...
all are bound by the same thing.
Are bound by the same... So if somebody's running for asylum,
the difference
same thing.
The difference is the other countries in the world, they have, X amount of dollars. But the United States has Z amount of dollars.
Okay.
So they're coming where the resources are.
Right.
And also, it would seem that they're coming to a place that the United States is a place that everybody seems to want to come to for the freedom aspect that we represent.
Well, that's a problematic statement that you just made.
Okay.
It's important for us to understand, just because you had an issue with freedom in the place where you were, you had torture and oppression and gangs and all kind of mayhem where you were, you run from the danger. You run to safety.
Right.
But when you get to safety and somebody gives you a way to post up in safety, that doesn't mean that you believe the same thing about what kind of country you're in as the people who are already here believe.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's, yeah.
This is why I say this all the time. If it were me and I was worried about the future of the United States, I'd put all African Americans in all of the elected offices in the country, because there's no other population in this country that is more invidiously sold to the idea of the majoritarian American democracy than African people in this country.
I 100% agree.
Because African people don't have they don't have a country to go back to. They can't go back to France, right? Yeah. You don't know whether you came from Zambia, whether you came from Somaliland, did you come from Uruguay, or not Uruguay, Yorubaland, or you Fana, or you Igbo. You have no idea, right? Because they made it impossible for you to keep that identity. You couldn't speak your own language. You couldn't say your own name. You couldn't remember your own history. They did everything possible to disconnect you and treat you like you were just livestock.
Yeah. And
that went on for hundreds of years. So there's nothing you can do about that. I mean, we can be mad about it, and it's good to be mad. It's, you get energy out of being mad, but you can't do anything about it because it already happened, right?
Right.
So what has happened is African people's identity is majoritarian democracy. That's what African people's core identity is.
Right.
A majoritarian democracy in which you have baseline rights that cannot be taken away from you. And that your definition as an American has nothing to do with your ethnicity. It has nothing to do with your appearance. It has nothing to do with whoever your birth culture came from. Your ethnicity is you're an American. You can have I said it wrong. You can have an ethnicity, but being an American is not an ethnicity. Being an American is a legal status. You are a citizen of the United States of America. If you believe in that, and you believe that the citizens of the United States should be ruled by a majoritarian democracy in which you have rights that are guaranteed, that the majority of people in this country cannot take away those rights, and you enforce that through your executive branch, your legislative branch, and your judicial branch, if you believe that, you can all come together, no matter what color you are, no matter what language you speak, no matter what part of the country you come from, you can all come together because your goal is going to be the same goal.
Let me say this. If dealing with corporate, dealing with most of American life, it doesn't seem that way. But when you out in the streets and you're dealing with all types of different people, for the most part, I would have to say at least 80% of the time, we all live in democracy because I can fellowship, work, co-work, be in business with other people of different colors, different nationalities. When you're in the streets of the U.S., anywhere on Main Street, you can deal, and it is a democracy actually flowing. It's just that when we, especially us black folks, when we dealing with corporate and business, then different things happen.
What happens though is you have pools of people who have the ability to acquire and sustain power.
Right.
That can use that power to affect the democracy so that the majoritarian votes go their way.
Right.
So that's why you've had, we used to have on the top end income in this country back when Dwight Eisenhower, I know y'all don't know him, when Dwight Eisenhower was the president of the United States, a Republican in the 1950s, 1952 to 1960, the top income in this country could be taxed at a 91% rate. $9 out of $10 from that top pool of money goes back to the federal government.
Mm-hmm.
That's how we were. Since that time, the top end money can only be taxed at 38%, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that means if you're the top player, your taxes got reduced by 60%.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah.
But your revenue didn't increase by 60%. Your expenses didn't decrease by 60%.
Right.
So basically, people who had power were able to influence majoritarian votes in Congress in order to be able to get laws passed that lowered the tax burden for them without decreasing significantly expenses, so that we ended up with deficits as opposed to having surpluses. At the end of Bill Clinton's administration, we talked about this last week.
Yes.
We had a surplus the last year. I think it was a $236 or whatever $billion surplus, right? Go ahead.
I'm just saying, when you presented that to me the other day, and I heard that, the only thought I had in mind was, why don't we follow that format and go back to that? Since then, we haven't had a surplus.
No wiser words have ever been spoken.
I mean,
if you know how the problem emerged,
right,
why wouldn't you go back to the point when you didn't have the problem and just redo what you were doing when you didn't have the problem and let success just happen to you, right? Why wouldn't you do that?
Yes, sir.
Now, so that's important. So I talked about this because we talk about these asylum seekers. You have roughly 3 million impoverished, often unskilled people showing up in the United States every year, bum rushing across the border, needing housing, they need medical care, they need jobs, they need transportation, they need English language instruction, and a whole bunch of things. The advocates for the immigrants, and I'm not trying to be disrespectful to them, I just want us to be clear. The advocates for the immigrants all say, well, these immigrants, they were running from all of these terrible things they were running from, and they need and need and need. I get that. But those immigrants are not my immigrants. They don't belong to me. They belong to wherever they came from. They don't belong to me. Mm-hmm. You can't take your problem from Ecuador or from Guatemala or from Colombia or wherever you're from. You can't take your problem and just dump it on my doorstep and say that it's now my problem.
Mm-hmm. As we discussed the other day, it was said that it's just like you've got your own house with your own kids. You got a couple of kids, then all of a sudden now you got 3 or 4 new kids that come into
You know, you all don't know this because y'all younger, right? But when I was young, it was normal for African people to informally adopt other African people. So you may have a family unit where the father dies, there's 6 kids, mother can't take care of all of those kids. She's working as a domestic. She just can't take care of all these kids. So they would give 2 or 3 of the kids to other families, usually related families, but often people that were not biologically related to you would give the kids to other people, and other people would raise the kids. It was normal for us to raise other people's kids, right? Somehow we become so selfish as we become more Americanized. We become more selfish, and the value system that was inside of us that made us willing to do that, that value system doesn't exist anymore.
Well, I know when I was growing up, Mr. Hare, that value system actually was intact because we would have cousins or uncles that would stay for us for months, for years. We had friends that would stay over. Of course, mothers in the neighborhood would parent other kids. Hey, Billy, what you doing there? Or, you know. So we did have that value growing up.
And what happened was people who were serving those people that were sort of orphans that were now being taken care of by an unrelated family, people that were serving them started saying, well, I need some additional help. I need to get medical care for these kids. You know, I need to get food for these kids. I need to get clothes for these kids, you know, and so on. So they began to come together and advocate for that. But when they did that, then things turned into eligibility tests. Well, who gets eligible for this? Who gets eligible for that?
Gotcha.
And what you were doing informally became so formal that the spirit of informal adoption got broken.
Gotcha.
See, and foster care, I can tell you, I ran foster care programs across the state, and foster care turned into a business.
Right.
You know,
that's correct.
People were actually making a profit off of providing foster care.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So when I started looking at this, it to me, the first problem that the United States needs to recognize is why so many people are fleeing their homes in the first place. That's the first thing you got to do. Because if you're going to solve the problem of all these people bum rushing you on the border, the best way to solve it is to get them to stop bum rushing you on the border. How do you do that? Let them try to bum rush their way to stay home. So maybe if they could go home and they could eat at home, they wouldn't come all the way to California and try to eat in California, New Mexico, or Arizona and whatnot. To eat at home.
Yes,
You know what I mean? So, what do we need to do to make that happen, right? So I want to talk a little bit about this. So if the description that I've given is what is causing so many people to seek asylum in the U.S., what could we do to reduce, that push? Mexico recognized that the best hope for reducing asylum migrations into Mexico and then to the U.S. is to develop the southern Mexico region that borders Central America. I pull this out because I want this for you, Norm.
I want to hear it.
The Mexicans this is not something we have to convince the Mexicans to do. The Mexicans in writing have already gotten together with other Central American countries, and they're saying, not my words, they're saying that they have to develop the southern Mexico region that borders Central America, which is exactly what I'm saying.
Exactly.
You got this frontier zone, sparsely populated. I don't know if y'all been down there, but you got roads that are going upside mountains and whatnot, that one-lane roads. I don't even know how people get around if two cars are going in the opposite directions. I don't know how somebody will wind up going off the cliff, and so on. I mean, it's that kind of infrastructure there. Right. That infrastructure has to be completely regenerated into something that's more modern, that can provide the framework where commercialization, can take place. Business can operate. Lopez Obrador and the governments of 3 Central American countries signed a decree to promote. This is already in place. They assigned a decree to promote the region's development. Mexico's foreign minister, his name was Marcelo Ebrard, said that his government would pledge $30 billion to a regional development plan over the next 5 years. Working with the United Nations Economic Commission on Latin America and the Caribbean, the Mexican government presented the comprehensive development plan of El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, and Mexico in May of this year.
Wow.
We're not talking about something somebody said they were going to do 25 years ago.
Yeah.
This was signed in May of this year, okay?
Hey, Mr. Here.
Now, let me just give you some numbers here, because I know that's what you want to hear, right? If we assume that there are 5,000 asylum seekers trying to enter the United States every day.
Okay.
That's the pace right now, right? That will result in 1.825 million asylum, 1,825,000 asylum applicants every year. Okay. That's what we would be.
All right.
Assuming that they cluster in family groups of 4 people to a family group. Usually these asylum seekers are connected to other people.
Yes.
So let's assume that they average 4 people to a household. That means that there'd be roughly 500,000 family units that would be seeking asylum. So 4 people to a family, find a job for one of them, and that one person would support themselves and the other 3 people in that family unit.
Okay.
That's the model that I'm talking about.
All right.
If the United States works with Mexico to provide infrastructure development in the southern part of Mexico, including roads, electrical infrastructure, gas lines, forest clearing, water treatment, drainage, electricity, this would provide a huge demand for unskilled and skilled labor. Just think about what I just talked about. Now, you need some talented players. You need planners. You need people that are draftsmen. You need engineers. I mean, you need, people that know how to do some scientific-based stuff. But the vast majority of that work, if you got a strong back and you can put up with a lot of dust, you got a job, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And so if the United States were to provide funding for 500,000 jobs per year to perform this work developing southern Mexico, the economic reasons why people seeking asylum in the United States would dramatically reduce or disappear. You hire those 500,000 people and they clear brush, on the forest. They knock down trees to make more space, for housing. They build roads. They grade roads. They build drainage lines or sewer lines on the sides of roads. They help build the basic infrastructure for housing, putting in gas lines and electric lines. I mean, all the kind of stuff that we saw happen here.
Yes.
Right? I mean, you all are almost old enough to know to remember when Transit Road was just a two lane road. Yeah. It had one lane that went north and one lane that went south.
Yes.
And if two cars were coming at the same time or in opposite directions, somebody had to move over, in order for people to get by. I mean, that was the reality then. Mm-hmm. But they took federal money, urban development assistance grant money, housing and urban development money. They put billions of dollars into this game, right? And they built up Union Road. They built up Harlem Road. They built up a transit road and so on. They put, I know y'all didn't want it, but they put this expressway through the middle of the city. Oh, you remember, you used to live over there in the neighborhood, right?
It started the year I was born in 66.
Yep. See, but you should have got a sled like I had, so you could have practiced sledding, on the on the hole that they created, for the expressway. I mean, but I mean, these are terrible things were done. I mean, they were disrespectful and destructive, to particularly minority communities. Mm-hmm. But my point is that we saw the development that occurred once you built the infrastructure.
Right.
Yeah.
There didn't used to be roads that you go down 16, 17 miles and you see nothing but business. Very few houses, mostly business, along Transit Road, along Harlem Road, and so on. How did that happen? Once they put the infrastructure in place, then businesses would say, well, I can put a house over here because you already got the gas lines, you already got the plumbing, the water lines are already there, you got the electricity is already there. Yeah, we've already graded it. I'll just put a driveway in there and put a foundation here. I might not even put a basement in there. I just put a foundation there, and we can make a house.
It can roll
and rock and roll, right?
Yeah.
And that's what happened. Okay, and so my point is that you've been alive long enough to have seen this with your own eyes. You know that this is what will occur. If that were done in Mexico, instead of us having 3 million people bum rushing, the southern border of the United States, we'd have 15 or 16 people trying to bum rush, getting to southern Mexico so they get a piece of that action in southern Mexico.
Get a job.
Now, if they're down there, put some schools down there.
Yeah.
Don't let them be dumb, to put some schools down there. Teach them how to live in a majoritarian democracy in their space. Mm-hmm. Use the wages. I did a little bit of math on this. If you pay these people $3 an hour, which is, about 50 or 60 cents an hour above minimum wage for that area of the world. Mm-hmm. So you pay them $3 an hour for 500,000 people, workers, that would result in a cash flow of $3.12 billion that you'd have to pay. Now that sounds like a big piece of money. Look how much money we're paying right now. We're paying like $14 to $15 billion right now to defend the border.
That's right.
Mr. Hare, when it comes down to it, and the way that I'm seeing and understanding exactly what you're saying, not only will it provide for the people trying to come into the country, but it would create large revenue for the United States itself.
Everybody will wind up winning.
Everybody eats. Everybody
you
eats.
wind up. I would tax their. I wouldn't give the money to Mexico. Mm-hmm. Forgive me for being so, self-centered or whatnot.
Why not?
Right?
Why not, though?
But I wouldn't trust them if I gave them the money that they would give the money to the people. So what I would do is I would create an administration, and I would pay the people myself directly.
Okay.
So if it costs me, $200 million to be able to run the show, I'll just pay the $200 million. I'll hire the people myself.
Yes. Right.
I'll pay the people myself. I'll put the ATM machines down there myself. Right.
Gotcha.
So that I ain't got to worry about Lopez somebody or some other person.
Somebody in charge.
Right. I can't be trusting you. Okay. Right. So I would do that. But the outcome would be you would spend your money in southern Mexico. How long do you think it would take the Mexican people to figure out that if there's 500,000 people working in southern Mexico right now that weren't working last year, that those people are going to need maybe $50 worth of groceries a piece each week
Right. That's
every week.
correct. That's
Okay,
right. You got
forever.
it. You
right?
got it.
They're going to need $100 worth of clothes every month. Forever. Right? They're going to need. I mean, there's going to be things they're going to need.
You create a culture.
And
That's
so
exactly what you.
You don't have to build. The Mexican people will come down. The ones that got money, they'll be out there. They'll be doing the Mexican business bishops and Mexican 7-Eleven and Mexican Tops. I mean, they'll be on this like white on rice.
McDonald's, Burger King, all of them.
In fact, you don't have to do it. Tops will show up before you do.
That's right.
Yeah.
Tops will be knocking on the door.
Walmart also.
Tops will be knocking on the doors. Excuse me. I know y'all been living here for a long time. I need y'all to move like a couple of miles over that way. I want to build a plaza right here and put a Tops plaza right there.
Can I make one comment real quick, Mr. Hare? I just like to say to everybody listening, you've now heard the hair
plan. I mean,
the hair plan, the hair solution.
This can work. There are lots of ways we can solve our problem.
Yeah.
Your goal has to actually be to solve the problem. But what I'm trying to get people to understand is the reason why we're not focused on doing real things to solve the real problem is because the people that are in political power, who have the political leverage, they're using their political leverage to try to create an environment in which you get drawn into the environment and join them in making them more powerful in the environment, but not joining in making solutions that will solve the problem.
Right.
We've got to get together to make solutions that solve the problem. And these people that are trying to use their democratic processes to divide us and become the largest, faction in the United States, we need to throw those people to the side.
Yes, sir.
That's not going to help us. I'm talking about things that will actually help us. So listen, when we get, I had a lot more I wanted to talk about. I'm going to tell you about, DeSantis and Disney. But I just want you to just understand something. Disney spends or hires something like 75,000 people in Florida. Wow. How many companies do you know hire 75,000 people in one state?
Yeah.
How many companies do you know that generate $55 billion in revenue in one state? That's what Disney does for Florida. What do you think happened? Now, it would cost Disney a lot of money to move Disney from Florida to someplace else. But you can make it so intolerable for Disney to stay in Florida that Disney will make a decision to move someplace else. And the only people that will be hurt by that will be the people that live in Florida. So I just need for you all to understand that's snarky, I'm the best guy, you all aren't really Americans, I'm the only real American, follow me, and so on. That Mussolini type behavior, you need to check that at the door. Thank you all for listening to us and support us. I need more participation from you guys on Friday. Look forward to talking to you then here at Living for the People at 91.3 FM WBNY. See you then.
So hold me, mum. So hold me, mum. So hold me, mum. So hold me, mum. In your